Hello, everyone. I'm Daniel Rubenstein. This is the live daily briefing of the Israeli Citizen Spokesperson's Office. We are live on Instagram, X, YouTube, and LinkedIn, and available afterwards wherever you get your podcasts. So please start submitting questions in the chat. And as always, like, follow, subscribe, help us reach a wider audience. I want to first thank everyone who tuned in yesterday to our live October 7th commemoration event with Elon Levy and Maya Bentwich. The entire team at the Israeli Citizen Spokesperson's Office produced a fabulous hour of programming. I highly suggest that you go watch it. It is available on our social media channels. You're not going to want to miss it. Today is October 8th, another grim anniversary. Hezbollah is celebrating today. Today marks exactly 1 year since the terrorist army Hezbollah in Lebanon joined Hamas's war against Israel by opening a second front from Lebanon. Hezbollah saw what Hamas did on October 7th, decided it was wonderful, and started a war against Israel on October 8th. Since it joined Hamas's war exactly 1 year ago, Hezbollah has fired more than 9,000 rockets, guided anti-tank missiles, and suicide drones into Israel. The rocket attacks continue. Hezbollah fired over 100 rockets today at Haifa, Israel's third largest city. Hezbollah's war against Israel that started on October 8th has forced more than 60,000 Israelis living near the border with Lebanon to flee their homes because Hezbollah was shooting guided anti-tank missiles at their homes. Millions of other Israelis are running to their bomb shelters every day because Hezbollah doesn't want to stop the war that it started. Since October 8th, 1 year ago, Hezbollah never stopped its attacks. And as a result, Israel has acted in self-defense against Hezbollah in Lebanon because the government of Lebanon has failed for decades to take responsibility for what happens in Lebanon. Israeli ground forces are operating inside Lebanon right now, and what they are discovering is terrifying. Hezbollah had plans for an October 7th style massacre of its own. Hezbollah had plans to invade Israel, capture villages, and carry out horrific atrocities. Hezbollah had a plan to conquer the Galilee. The IDF is dismantling Hezbollah's capabilities and pushing it away from the Israeli border so that the 60,000 Israelis who fled their homes inside Israel can return to their homes safely. Hamas in the south in Gaza, Hezbollah in the north in Lebanon. These are two of the 7 fronts which Israel is fighting. Israel's also fighting terrorists in the West Bank, Houthis in Yemen, Iranian-backed militias in Iraq that are attacking Israel with suicide drones, Iranians in Syria, and the Iranian regime itself from inside Iran. Let's talk about where we are with Iran. Iran fired ballistic missiles at Israel last April. Israel's response in Iran after that was quite limited. Iran got the message that it can fire ballistic missiles at Israel and get away with it. So Iran fired more ballistic missiles, 180 of them last week. We should expect a strong Israeli response to this Iranian attack. It's not a matter of if, but when and how. Everything I've said up to this point should be widely known. That Israel is under attack from 7 fronts, that the Iranian regime built a ring of fire around Israel, that Hamas is holding 101 Israeli hostages in its terror dungeons under Gaza. And yet, everyone is asking, how does this end? When I go on television, I'm asked, is this just going to be a forever war? What is the political solution that ends the October 7th war? What is the diplomatic off-ramp to the war that Iran and its proxies have waged for an entire year? The most honest answer I can give you, is I don't know how this all ends. But what I can tell you is this. If Israel ends its military operations in Gaza right now, the Hamas rapist regime will still be the government of Gaza. The 101 Israeli hostages that the Hamas rapist regime is holding in its underground terror dungeons will still be in the underground terror dungeons. If Israel ends its military operations in Gaza right now and withdraws from Gaza, Hamas will continue to attack Israelis who live near the Gaza border. Hamas will rebuild, rearm, and recommit to carrying out more October 7th style massacres. That's what Hamas promised to do from the beginning. That's why Hamas and its supporters celebrated the anniversary of the October 7th massacre. They celebrated October 7th. This is what will happen if Israel retreats from Gaza and goes back to an October 6th reality. What about the Lebanon front in the north? Israel wasn't attacking Lebanon. The border was quiet. Hezbollah in Lebanon attacked Israel, which means that if Israel stops defending itself, Hezbollah will keep attacking. Hezbollah said that it will not stop attacking Israel until there's a ceasefire in Gaza. There's not going to be a ceasefire in Gaza if it's a ceasefire that guarantees that Hamas will remain in power and hostages will remain in captivity. What Hezbollah has done is tie its fate to Hamas. Hezbollah kept its word to Hamas and has attacked Israelis every day for the past year. Hezbollah opened a second front against Israel 1 year ago on October 8th in order to help Hamas survive the consequences of the October 7th massacre. Hezbollah opened a second front in order to help Hamas achieve its war goals. Hezbollah made that choice. Hezbollah made that choice, and there are consequences for it. Hamas is welcome to come out of the tunnels and say, we're done. We're releasing the hostages. It's not doing that. Palestinian leaders are not calling on Hamas to do that. Turkey is not calling on Hamas to do that. Qatar is not calling on Hamas to do that. The government of South Africa is not calling on Hamas to do that. So the war goes on. The war cannot end with Iran's ring of fire still entrenched around Israel and ready to open fire at any time. Israel doesn't have just the right to defend itself against such aggression. It has the obligation to defeat its enemies and ensure a safe and secure future for its people. All nations of the world that care about the future of humanity must side with Israel in this fight. Let's take some questions now for our friends watching live on our social media platforms, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube. Yes, please.
We have a question from What I Just Said, who asks, is it true that Sinwar emerged from his tunnel and joined the negotiations again?
I have seen mixed reports about the whereabouts and the availability of Hamas leader Yahya Sinwar. For quite some time now, most of the reports were indicating that Sinwar is offline. There was speculation that perhaps he was killed in an Israeli strike, or that he was in deep hiding and not communicating with any of his messengers. More recently, I've seen maybe not some headlines, but some indications that Sinwar is communicating again. We will have to wait and see what happens with that, but we assume that Sinwar is alive in Gaza until we hear otherwise, and we assume that Sinwar has surrounded himself with Israeli hostages, using them as human shields in order to protect himself from the consequences of the October 7th massacre and the war that his terrorist army has waged for the past year. As far as we know, in the meantime, he is still alive, and the war goes on.
We have a pair of questions from YouTube. Why is UNIFIL not withdrawing during the IDF operations? And what was UNIFIL doing there in the first place? Because it does not look like they enforced the Security Council Resolution 1701 or kept anybody away from bombarding Israel.
Part of the answer is hidden in the question. You mentioned this organization UNIFIL, UNIFIL. For those of you watching and you've never heard of UNIFIL, the UNIFIL stands for United Nations Interim Force in Lebanon. Interim is the key word. Interim means temporary. UNIFIL, this interim force, was established in 1978. So the United Nations has had some type of so-called peacekeeping operation inside Lebanon since the late 70s. Breaking news, UNIFIL has not kept the peace. What UNIFIL has done inside Lebanon, especially since 2006, which is when Israel's last war with Hezbollah ended. Since 2006, Hezbollah has been driving around and watching as Hezbollah rearms and prepares for war with Israel, which had ultimately started 18 years after. We're now 18 years after 2006. And yes, I've seen these headlines about how the UNIFIL, people call them UN peacekeepers. I'm hesitant to use the term peacekeepers because I simply don't understand what peace they have kept or have ever kept. but they are maintaining their positions in southern Lebanon, and it may be very dangerous for them. It would be safer at this point if they would just evacuate. The UNIFIL, the UN forces, were supposed to be monitoring and implementing UN Security Council Resolution 1701, which called for Hezbollah's disarmament and its withdrawal from southern Lebanon and replacement with the Lebanese army. That did not happen, so I don't have much optimism that this same force of the United Nations will be able to accomplish anything, and it's far too late.
We have a question from Rowena P. How do we change the world narrative when the buzzword is to stop escalation, and escalation is defined as everything that Israel does? What can we say?
Sometimes people don't want to listen to very reasonable arguments because they're coming from a different position and they're starting from the conclusion that it's Israel that's wrong and it's Israel that needs to dissolve itself and it's the other side that needs to win this war. But all that we can do from the positions that all of us are in, we here at the Israeli Citizen Spokesperson's Office, we are ordinary citizens, we are not part of the government. We amplify our voices and we count on you to help us amplify our voice. We are sharing the key messages that we think make the most sense, that explain Israel's position, that explains the seven-front war that Iran and its proxies are fighting against Israel. We need to stick to our truth, our messages, and share content with people who are simply not seeing it. We need to tell the truth, not be afraid of the truth, and let's see what happens.
This will be our last question. Somebody asks, I could not watch the ceremony last night. Where online can I watch the October 7th commemoration ceremony?
Thank you for asking that question again about the commemoration ceremony that was last night. We broadcast it live from the studio where I'm standing. Eilon Levy and Maya Bentwich were the hosts. The entire team at the Israeli Citizen Spokesperson's Office put an enormous amount of work into creating this presentation, this event, which we broadcast live from here. Now, how do you watch it? If you were not able to watch the live, you can go to our YouTube channel right now and you can find it. We're going to make sure it's on all the other platforms as well, Facebook, X, and so on. YouTube is the best place to find it. If you go to youtube.com, go to the search bar, type Israeli Citizen Spokesperson's Office, click our channel. First, subscribe to our channel before you watch the live, and then you'll be able to watch the ceremony from last night. It was very moving. I got a lot of positive feedback from it. So I hope those of you who missed it, you weren't able to watch it on the 7th, you will find it on our social media channels, especially on YouTube, on the 8th, which is today. I want to thank everyone for watching the live daily briefing of the Israeli Citizen Spokesperson's Office. I'm Daniel Rubenstein. We are back tomorrow at 3 p.m. Israel time. That's 8 a.m. on the East Coast. You can always follow up with me on my personal accounts on social media. On Instagram, I'm Ruby Guides Israel, R-U-B-Y Guides Israel. It's been a pleasure. Have a wonderful day.